What if I told you that the very weakness you hide from the world is not what makes you small, but what makes you human? What if the flaw you bury in silence, the trembling of your hands when life grows heavy, the fear of being seen too fragile, is the exact place where your strength is waiting to be born? We live in a world that tells us, hide your scars, cover your doubts, never let them see you fall. But in that performance, we lose something far greater. We lose ourselves. Weakness is not your enemy. Weakness is the whisper in the dark that asks you to rise. It's the weight pressing on your chest at night, demanding that you stop pretending and finally confront the truth. The chains you wear are not forged by others, but by your own refusal to face what hurts. And so I ask you, are you ready to erase your weakness, not by hiding it, not by pretending to be untouchable, but by burning through it, until only your raw, unshakable essence remains? Because strength isn't the absence of weakness. Strength is what survives after weakness has been faced, shattered, and transformed into power. We are told from childhood that strength is the only currency that matters. We are told that to be respected, we must never let our knees tremble, never let our voices crack, never let others see us bleed. And so, from the earliest moments of life, we learn to build walls around the most fragile parts of ourselves. Teachers reward composure, parents praise toughness, friends admire the mask of control, and society applauds the image of power. But in this performance, something essential is lost. We confuse strength with silence, endurance with denial, survival with suppression. Weakness becomes the enemy not because it truly threatens us, but because we are conditioned to see it as shame. To cry is weakness. To hesitate is weakness. To confess doubt is weakness. And so we bury these truths deep inside us. But what happens to the soul that spends its entire life hiding? It grows heavy, brittle, unable to breathe under the pressure of its own disguise. That disguise becomes the prison where many spend their lives, fearing that one crack will expose them to the very judgment they have spent years running from. Machiavelli once said it is better to be feared than loved, because fear is in the control of the one who wields it, while love depends on the hearts of others. The world has taken this to mean that vulnerability is dangerous, and that those who reveal it invite their own destruction. Yet what is more dangerous? To expose your humanity, or to lose it entirely? Fear and hardness may create the illusion of power, but they erode the possibility of connection, and without connection, the human spirit begins to decay. Emotional maturity is not born out of dominance, but out of the courage to face discomfort. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, repress, and deny. These shadows are labeled as weakness, yet they are the very roots of strength when brought into the light. To avoid them is to remain shallow, to stay stunted in growth, trapped in a cycle where every small tremor of doubt feels like a collapse of the self. Weakness, therefore, is not the truth itself, but our refusal to confront it. Think of the countless masks people wear. The smile that hides despair, the pride that covers insecurity, the laughter that conceals loneliness. Weakness exists not in the feeling itself, but in the exhausting effort to pretend otherwise. Society praises the mask, but no one speaks of the toll it takes. That toll shows up in sleepless nights, in addictions that numb the silence, in the quiet resentment that grows when we realize no one knows who we truly are. And yet, can we blame ourselves? When the world punishes authenticity and rewards performance, the mask becomes not only a habit, but a survival strategy. But survival is not living. Survival without truth leaves us hollow, like actors trapped in a role they never chose. Weakness lingers beneath the costume, unhealed, demanding to be seen, and the longer it is denied, the louder it becomes. Denied weakness turns into bitterness. Suppressed vulnerability mutates into arrogance. The inability to face fragility breeds cruelty. We lash out at others because we are unable to accept our own trembling, and in this cycle, the very thing we tried to escape, being powerless, becomes our reality. There is a misconception that to admit weakness is to surrender control, but the opposite is true. To deny it is to hand over control to fear, to shame, to silence. What we repress controls us from the shadows, dictating our actions in ways we do not even recognize. The man who cannot admit his insecurity seeks power endlessly, trying to fill a void that will never close. The woman who hides her wounds becomes entangled in relationships that repeat the same pain, unable to step into authenticity. The leader who denies fear rules through domination because he cannot admit uncertainty. Weakness, unacknowledged, becomes the invisible puppeteer of our lives, and yet, when faced directly, it loses its power. When we confront the trembling, when we sit with the ache instead of burying it, we discover something the world never told us. Weakness transforms into strength the moment we stop running from it. To say, "I am afraid," does not diminish you. It sets you free from fear's grip. To confess, "I am uncertain," does not erase your worth. It anchors you in reality. Denial enslaves, but acceptance liberates. It is easier to believe that strength comes from perfection. This illusion keeps industries alive, selling us masks to wear and roles to play. Self-help slogans tell us to be unstoppable. Motivational posters insist that pain is weakness leaving the body, and cultural myths glorify those who appear unbreakable. But what these messages forget is that humans are not machines. We are not designed to erase our fragility, but to move through it. Perfection is not only unattainable, it is inhuman. And the pursuit of it is the most dangerous weakness of all, the endless need to appear flawless, which blinds us to our actual power. To pretend perfection is to walk away from authenticity. It creates comparison, jealousy, despair, and a life lived on the stage of others' expectations. Weakness is not imperfection. Weakness is the moment we allow lies to dictate who we are, and the greatest lie of all is that we must be flawless to be worthy. Worth does not come from being untouched. It comes from being real, even in the mess. Philosophers have long warned about the consequences of denying weakness. Nietzsche, in his critique of morality, spoke of how societies invert values, labeling humility as virtue and strength as sin. Yet in this inversion also lies a deeper truth, that what we call weakness often carries the seed of transformation. Weakness is not a chain meant to bind you forever. It is an invitation to evolve. But when we mistake it for shame, we refuse the invitation. Instead, we build identities out of avoidance. We cling to titles, possessions, or appearances to distract from what lies beneath. The cost of this denial is immense. Whole nations, families, and individuals collapse, not because they were too weak, but because they refused to admit their weakness in time. History shows us empires that fell under the weight of their own arrogance. Leaders who destroyed themselves by refusing to appear human. Lovers who lost one another because neither could admit to fear. Weakness denied is weakness multiplied. It does not disappear when hidden. It grows in silence until it breaks through, often in the most destructive ways. The hardest truth to accept is this: weakness is not something you can erase by force. You cannot simply command it away, silence it with willpower, or bury it with distractions. The more you fight it as an enemy, the more it grips you. But to see it clearly, to name it without shame, to hold it without judgment, that is where its power dissolves. Weakness is not the chains on your hands, it is the shadow you refuse to turn and face. And shadows only seem threatening until the light touches them. When you step into the light of honesty, you discover that what you feared was not weakness itself, but the world's reaction to it. And then you realize, the world's judgment was never yours to carry. Weakness was never a curse, it was the doorway you were meant to walk through, the mirror that would show you your truest self if only you dared to look. Every person carries a story they rarely speak of, the moments when they broke silently and no one noticed. There is the student who stares at the exam paper, heart racing, pretending confidence while shame gnaws at their chest. There is the parent who sacrifices endlessly but lies awake at night, wondering if they are enough. There is the friend who laughs the loudest in the group but weeps quietly in the bathroom afterward. These struggles are universal, yet they are hidden under layers of performance. We are conditioned to believe that our worth depends on composure, so we master the art of disguising pain. We polish our smiles, rehearse our tones, and learn to act as though nothing touches us. But in that act, we disconnect from ourselves. The pain we hide does not vanish. It becomes a silent weight, pressing down in ways we cannot name, and slowly the distance grows between who we are and who we pretend to be. This is the relatable struggle, the gap between our inner truth and the mask we are forced to wear. Think of rejection, the sting of being told you are not wanted, not chosen, not enough. We pretend it rolls off us, that we are above it, but rejection leaves invisible wounds. That job application unanswered, that message ignored, that love unreturned. Each one chips away at the soul, and yet we smile, pretending to be unaffected because to admit we are hurt is to appear weak. But the truth is, rejection shapes us in profound ways. It makes us question our worth, replaying the same memories over and over like broken film reels. For some, rejection becomes fuel, a burning drive to prove the world wrong. For others, it becomes a chain, holding them back from ever trying again. Either way, the pain is real, and it is shared by everyone, though rarely admitted. If you strip away the illusions, you will find that every human being has stood in that same darkness, hearing the same question echo inside. Am I enough? That question haunts us all, no matter how strong the mask may appear. Failure, too, becomes a wound we all carry. The exam we failed after nights of study. The business that collapsed despite endless sacrifice. The relationship that ended when we gave it everything. Failure has a way of convincing us that we are broken beyond repair. Society tells us to glorify success, to celebrate only victories. But it rarely gives space for the quiet truth that failure is far more common than triumph, and so each failure becomes a private storm, endured in silence. People see the polished surface of others' lives and believe they are the only ones falling apart, but behind every success is a trail of failures hidden from view. The relatable struggle is not in failing itself, but in the loneliness of failure, in the way we isolate ourselves when we feel we no longer measure up, in the way we compare our raw, unfiltered scars to the highlight reels of others. Failure does not just bruise the ego, it attacks the identity, whispering that we are less than, unworthy, undeserving of the life we dreamed of. Loneliness is another shadow that almost everyone has walked through, though few will admit it openly. You can sit in a crowded room and still feel unseen. You can have thousands of followers, endless conversations, and yet feel that no one truly understands you. This is the paradox of modern life. The more connected we appear, the lonelier we become. Loneliness is not only the absence of company, but the absence of recognition, the absence of being known in our raw truth. Many endure it silently, afraid to admit that they feel invisible. To say you are lonely is to risk sounding undesirable, needy, or fragile. And so the silence deepens. But the struggle of loneliness is not just sadness. It is disconnection from the essence of being human. We are wired for connection, for belonging, and without it, something in us begins to wither. And yet, it is universal. Everyone at some point has stared into the night feeling utterly alone. Everyone has longed for someone to truly see them. Loneliness is not an anomaly. It is the secret heartbeat of millions. Betrayal cuts even deeper. To trust someone with your heart, your secrets, your dreams, only to watch them fracture that trust, is a pain few can articulate. Betrayal teaches you not only about others, but about yourself. How much of your identity was tied to someone else. How fragile your foundations become when built on another's promises. The relatable struggle of betrayal is not only in the pain of being hurt, but in the confusion that follows. How could I not have seen it? Was I blind? Was I foolish? Betrayal births self-doubt, turning the wound inward, and once wounded, many retreat, vowing never to trust again. But this too becomes a prison, for a life without trust is not life, it is survival in isolation. We all carry scars of broken promises, friendships that dissolved in silence, or loves that ended in betrayal. And though each scar feels personal, it is the story of humanity itself, the story of risking closeness, falling into hurt, and deciding whether or not to open ourselves again. Perhaps the most universal struggle is the silence we keep even when no one demands it. There are words we never say, fears we never share, truths we bury inside, not because they are unspeakable, but because we have convinced ourselves that no one would understand. How many nights have been spent lying awake with thoughts too heavy to voice? How many tears have been wiped away before anyone could see? We silence ourselves out of fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of being rejected. But silence is not healing, it is suppression, and suppression over time becomes suffering. We live surrounded by others who look unshaken, yet beneath their calm surface are oceans of words they never dared to release. The relatable struggle is that we all believe we are the only ones carrying unspoken storms. In truth, everyone you meet is carrying something unseen. Everyone has a silence they have swallowed. Everyone is aching for the space where they can finally breathe, without hiding. In the end, the relatable struggle is this. We are all trying to live in a world that rewards masks while our souls ache for truth. We want to be strong, yet we are fragile. We want to be seen, yet we are terrified of exposure. We want to be loved, yet we fear rejection, and so we live in this constant tension between longing and fear, authenticity and performance. Some moments break us, some heal us, and some transform us. But what binds us all is that none of us are alone in this struggle. The very things we hide are the very things that connect us. The relatable struggle is not just a personal burden. It is the invisible thread that runs through every human life. And perhaps the deepest tragedy is not that we struggle, but that we forget how universal the struggle truly is. Strength does not arrive like thunder, loud and undeniable. It comes quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the still moments when you least expect it. You might notice it in the way you rise after a night of tears, not because the pain is gone, but because something inside you refuses to surrender. You might feel it in the way you finally sit with your loneliness, instead of distracting yourself endlessly. Awakening begins not in triumph, but in surrender. Surrendering to the truth of your experience without denial. When the world's noise fades, when the expectations dissolve, when you are left only with yourself, you discover that your fragility was never a cage, but a teacher. In that silence, you begin to hear something subtle. A voice you buried long ago, the voice of resilience, whispering that you are capable of carrying more than you ever imagined, not by hardening, but by allowing yourself to remain human. The scars you carry are not stains to be erased. They are maps of where you have been, proof of the battles you survived. Each scar tells a story, a reminder that pain visited you but did not destroy you. Awakening comes when you stop hiding these scars as if they diminish your worth and begin to see them as marks of endurance. People fear vulnerability because they mistake it for weakness. Yet the very act of surviving and choosing to continue is a radical form of strength. The world may never know the nights you endured alone, the weight you carried in silence, the storms you weathered without applause, but your scars know. And in the quiet recognition of them, you awaken to the truth that your worth has never depended on being untouched. It has always been shaped by the ways you endured, adapted, and emerged. Strength often looks nothing like the stories we are told. It does not always roar in victory or shine in perfection. Sometimes strength is the decision to keep breathing in a room that feels suffocating. Sometimes it is saying no when the world demands yes. Sometimes it is forgiving yourself for mistakes that have long haunted you. Awakening means understanding that strength is not found in the absence of fear, but in walking forward despite it. It is not about erasing pain, but about allowing pain to refine you. When you look back at the times you thought you were breaking, you begin to see that those moments were shaping you. Each collapse carried a seed of rebuilding. Each silence carved out space for a new voice to emerge. Awakening is the moment you stop resenting your fragility and realize it was guiding you toward the very strength you longed for. There is a quiet power in solitude, not the loneliness of disconnection, but the solitude of presence, the kind where you sit with yourself without trying to escape. In solitude, the world's expectations loosen their grip, and you begin to remember who you are beneath the masks. Awakening often begins here, in the quiet recognition of your own essence. You realize that the voices of doubt, shame, and fear are not the entirety of you. They are passing storms, not permanent skies. In solitude, you begin to feel the stillness that exists beneath the chaos. And in that stillness, a light flickers. It may be faint at first, but it grows the moment you acknowledge it. This is the awakening, the discovery that beneath every layer of performance, every scar and shadow, there is an unbreakable core. It has always been there, waiting for you to stop running long enough to see it. Awakening does not mean you will never struggle again. Pain will return, doubt will visit, fear will whisper. But the difference is that you will no longer mistake them for defeat. You will know they are visitors, not rulers. You will have walked through the fire and seen that you can withstand it. Strength is not invincibility, it is continuity. It is the quiet persistence of rising again and again, regardless of the weight pressing on your chest. And in this persistence, you discover a deep truth. Life was never asking you to be flawless, only present. To show up, even trembling. To keep moving, even uncertain. Awakening is the moment you shift from asking, "Why me?" to declaring, "Even me. Even with my scars, even with my fears, even with my broken pieces, I can stand." That realization changes everything. Think of light breaking through darkness. It doesn't erase the night all at once. It arrives slowly, patiently, until the shadows fade. Awakening feels the same. It does not demand perfection but progress. It asks you to notice the ways you are already carrying yourself more gently, speaking more honestly, choosing more courageously. These small shifts are the signs of strength. And though the world may not notice them, you will. You will notice the way your heart begins to soften instead of harden, the way you allow yourself to be seen instead of always hiding, the way you honor your scars instead of resenting them. Awakening is not a grand event, but a quiet unfolding. It is the moment you realize that every experience you once called weakness has been shaping you into someone unshakable, not untouched, but unbroken. The deepest awakening is this, realizing that your worth was never conditional. It was never tied to perfection, success, or validation. It has always been intrinsic, unmovable, waiting for you to see it. Strength does not mean becoming someone new. It means returning to who you always were, beneath the fear. When you strip away the lies, the masks, the pretenses, you stand face to face with your raw essence, and you realize that essence was never weak. It was always capable, always resilient, always more than the world allowed you to believe. Awakening is not about gaining something outside of you. It is about remembering what has always been inside of you. And in that remembrance, you step into a strength that is not loud, not performative, but eternal. To erase weakness is not to destroy a part of yourself, but to transform your relationship with it. The world teaches you to silence the parts of yourself that shake, but in truth, those tremors are where your authenticity lives. Awakening is not about becoming untouchable. It is about daring to remain real in a world obsessed with illusions. The conclusion to all of your searching is this. You do not need to be perfect to be powerful. You do not need the applause of strangers or the validation of those who will never truly know your heart. What you need is the courage to face yourself fully, without disguise, to sit with your scars and declare that they are not stains, but signatures of survival. This is not the ending of a journey, but the beginning of a revolution that takes place quietly, in the privacy of your own soul. The true erasure of weakness happens when you stop seeing weakness as an enemy and start recognizing it as the ground upon which your greatest strength stands. There is a temptation to believe that transformation must be loud, visible, and undeniable to others. But the truth is, the most powerful transformations often happen in silence. No one sees the moment you forgive yourself. No one applauds the instant you decide to keep going when your heart aches. No one knows when you choose patience over anger, softness over pride, honesty over fear. And yet these are the revolutions that matter. They may not trend, they may not win recognition, but they alter the course of your entire life. The conclusion is not about the world finally seeing you. It is about you finally seeing yourself. Strength begins in the inner decision to value truth over performance, to embrace the quiet victories that happen without witnesses. When you no longer need the outside world to validate your resilience, you begin to live from a place of freedom. That freedom is strength beyond measure, because it cannot be taken from you. It belongs only to you, untouched, unshakable, eternal. There is a kind of beauty that exists only when you stop chasing approval. It is the beauty of authenticity, the beauty of scars carried with dignity, the beauty of eyes that no longer hide behind masks. This is not the beauty sold in glossy images or measured by flawless appearances. This is the beauty of truth, the beauty of a life lived honestly, even when it is difficult. The conclusion of weakness is not that it ruins you. It strips away illusions until only what is essential remains. In this refinement, you discover a worth that is not conditional. No failure can erase it, no rejection can diminish it, no betrayal can destroy it. It is yours by birth, unearned yet undeniable. To recognize this is to stop asking for the world's permission to exist fully. To recognize this is to realize that your greatest act of defiance in a world addicted to masks is to live without one, and in doing so you offer something rare, something powerful. You offer the world your truth. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to notice the subtle shifts that prove your awakening. You speak a little slower, with more intention, because you are no longer rushing to impress. You carry yourself differently, not with arrogance, but with a calm assurance that comes from knowing your value does not need to be proven. You begin to honor silence, no longer afraid of it, because it is in silence that your truest strength whispers. You see others more clearly too, recognizing their masks without judgment, because you know the struggle yourself. Compassion deepens, not because you have been spared pain, but because you have lived through it. The conclusion is that strength is not selfish, it radiates outward. When you awaken, you become a mirror for others. Your scars, once hidden, become a map for someone else to find their way. Your courage to embrace fragility gives permission to others to do the same. And in this, the revolution of one soul quietly becomes the revolution of many, without ever needing to shout. The real revolution was never about changing the world's perception of you. It was about changing your perception of yourself. Outward validation is fragile, fleeting, and conditional. One moment the world praises you, the next it forgets you. But the strength born from inner transformation is timeless. It is not dependent on applause, on titles, or on the fleeting admiration of strangers. It is yours alone. When you learn this, you become untouchable. Not because you never fall, but because you no longer break when you do. You see weakness differently, not as a curse, but as a compass. Every fear becomes a doorway. Every scar becomes a lesson. Every silence becomes a place of renewal. And when you live this way, you realize the revolution is not about erasing weakness, but about erasing the lies you told yourself about what weakness meant. You were never fragile in the way you thought. You were only human. And being human is not a limitation, but a gift. And so the conclusion is not a dramatic ending, but a quiet beginning. The call is not to seek approval or to demand recognition, but to return to yourself. To remember that your worth was never lost, only hidden beneath layers of doubt, fear, and pretense. The revolution is inward. It happens in the way you breathe through pain instead of running from it, in the way you forgive yourself instead of condemning yourself, in the way you rise with scars instead of trying to erase them. The revolution is not for others to see. It is for you to live. And when you live it, when you embody it, when you stop pretending and start existing authentically, you discover something profound. You no longer need to erase your weakness because it has already become your strength. And in that moment of realization, there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to hide. There is only silence, presence, and the unshakable truth of who you are.